member companies and partners. Susan has extensive experience in creating innovative business solutions at the base of the pyramid, leveraging more than 20 years in financial and private sector development. She has consulted for IFC, USAID, CGAP, and the European Investment Fund, among other international financial institutions and organizations. She has deep knowledge of value chain analysis and international business strategy. Her sectorial specialties also include finance, agriculture, and healthcare. Susan has worked as an emerging markets analyst for financial institutions such as Deutsche Bank, Baring Securities in Mexico, and Citibank in the Middle East Africa division. For 7 years, she produced a report for Visa on card markets in 50 countries. Susan has a BA in government from Harvard College, as well as a master's in international affairs and an MBA from Columbia University in New York. She also has an MA in political economy from the University of California, Los Angeles. Without any further delay, I will hand it over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Jessica, and welcome everybody to our webinar. It's my pleasure to lead this first webinar for BCTA in my role as program manager. Let's get right to it. So this webinar is being sponsored by 3 different organizations. One is the Business Call to Action, which I will tell you a little bit of detail about in a moment. It's also sponsored by Business Fights Poverty, a global online community of over 10,000 professionals that are dedicated to the idea of fighting poverty through core business initiatives. There's also the Business Action for Africa, which is a network of businesses and development stakeholders investing in the future of Africa. The Business Call to Action, or BCTA, which is housed in the UNDP in New York, is a global membership platform which encourages private sector companies to develop innovative business models that combine both profitability with development impact in support of UN Millennium Development Goals. BCTA is supported by 9 partner organizations. Many of them are bilateral donor agencies, including USAID, DFID, USAID, and CETA. Those are the development agencies for Australia, UK, US, and Sweden. Also, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, UNDP, UN Global Compact, Clinton Global Initiative, and IBLF, the International Business Leaders Forum. To date, there are 44 leading companies that have responded to the Business Call to Action, making commitments to improve the lives and livelihoods of millions of people through commercially viable business ventures that engage low-income people as consumers, producers, suppliers, distributors of goods or services. Our target is to reach 150 companies as members by 2015. The companies that join Business Call to Action benefit from the services provided by BCTA. We are a high-visibility leadership platform that disseminates information and shares best knowledge practices with the public about the wonderful initiatives that our companies are pursuing. We are also a global network, a knowledge network. We create and disseminate information. We form partnerships and communities of practice, and we do validate and disseminate results. There's also a fact that this webinar is part of a broader series of face-to-face events taking place in New York, London, and Addis Ababa under the title of Business Impact for Good. The Business Impact for Good 2012 event series is supported by BCTA, Business Action for Africa, and Business Fights Poverty. The purpose of Business Impact for Good series and today's event is to help advance understanding and deepen engagement in the core issues around scale and measuring impact of business on development outcomes. Why focus on B2B partnerships? So that's the core purpose of today's call, and we have some very interesting examples. Essentially, it's for 3 reasons. Business-to-business partnerships can serve to bridge gaps or improve access to products and services, finance many of the things that are not available when a single business is pursuing base of the pyramid strategy. It's also to target deficiencies within a value chain if there's a lack of skilled workers or unreliable supply. And finally, it's often to leverage a collective influence of a coalition or a multi-stakeholder platform whereby the common interests of the businesses act together to improve the enabling environment or standards for business. Without further ado, I'd like to launch into the program. We have some excellent and deeply experienced speakers that have very interesting stories to share with us. The first speaker will be Anastasia Thatcher. She is the lead for Global Health and Services on the management team for Accenture Development Partnerships, a nonprofit practice serving development organizations. At Accenture, Anastasia has focused on growth and innovation strategies for healthcare, retail, and development sector clients. She's led teams to conceive, design, and deliver over 20 million stakeholder and corporate responsibility, 20 multi-stakeholder and corporate responsibility initiatives across 11 countries. Anastasia will set the context for today's discussion on B2B partnerships. I'm very much looking forward to her presenting some research that Accenture Development Partnerships has put together. Thank you, Anastasia.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to share some of the perspectives that Accenture Development Partnerships has been looking at the base of the pyramid, particularly as it relates to business-to-business partnerships. So I'm very pleased to be able to share some of that today. The objectives that I have for the 10 minutes allotted to me is to really provide all of you a view of some of the key drivers that we're seeing fueling business-to-business partnerships within the context of what we call convergence economy, as well as discuss a few emerging themes or even accelerators that can help initiate and further develop business-to-business partnerships within the base of the pyramid. Before I get started, just a very brief overview on Accenture Development Partnerships, really for those on the call that may not be familiar with us. We are, as you mentioned, a not-for-profit inside Accenture, termed a corporate social enterprise, which our mission is really to channel the core capabilities of Accenture, a global consulting firm, to those organizations working to further international development. So we have executed at this point more than 400 projects. We work with a range of clients or partners across the donor space, NGOs, and increasingly multinational companies that are also looking at their role to further international development and look at the needs and potential services for the base of the pyramid. So that's really where I'm going to focus most of my comments and discussion today. So the first contextual point I'd like to make is just to define what we have termed the convergence economy and why I feel it is important to consider when you think about what's fueling innovation in B2B partnerships at the base of the pyramid. On the left side, you see a traditional view of how the private sector, civil society, and public sector might be working, often alongside, but in parallel, and across different industries. But over the past decade, what we've seen, and this is highlighted in some of our research, is really an ecosystem, if I can use that term, is starting to emerge, where those silos have been broken down, and there's really a blurring between the different sectors and their roles. You might see, for instance, a pharmaceutical company that traditionally is seeking to create access to its medicines within an emerging economy, actually start to think about, well, how can I invest in capabilities of the health systems and clinicians, taking on a very non-traditional role. So I use that as an example. I think it's important to consider that the way that businesses are starting to rethink their roles within developing economies allows opportunity for new types of partnerships leveraging these new skills that they're developing. So I just want to lay that as the backdrop before going into what I see, and this is going to probably echo a few of Susan's comments, but why are companies seeking greater business-to-business partnerships at the base of the pyramid? I see it really stems from a convergence of issues and interests that creates that value proposition. I think there's a growing recognition that in order to access the business opportunities at the next frontier of development, often in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, businesses need to work together to address complex and interconnected development challenges. So if you're thinking about how do I access the 1 billion people at the base of the pyramid, what are the needs that I need to start thinking about in terms of education, water, nutrition, that seek to allow me to access those consumers? If I'm going to try to access new suppliers within emerging economies, perhaps that offer competitive advantage based on their location or access to raw materials, if I'm seeking to engage with communities to perhaps reduce my risk of operating in those areas, or perhaps even looking to tap the next generation of talent. We see the incredible success stories coming out of South Asia and Southeast Asia, and where is that next market coming from? And certainly companies are thinking about how can emerging economies really help them to fuel their own innovation. I think the examples that will be shared with us in a moment certainly highlight some examples. I might even raise GE Health and the investments that they've made in order to develop diagnostic and medical device technology that's more portable, more rugged, less costly in order to serve developing countries. That same technology and innovation actually can now give them a competitive advantage within their developed markets as well. So where do partnerships come in? And when I say business-to-business partnerships, I am thinking about a range of interactions and relationships. Certainly there's one-to-one partnerships, and we'll hear a bit about some examples of those. I think more and more we're seeing strong alliances and coalitions. You think about companies that are coming together both across industries but also within industries in order to really access this opportunity. For instance, the Pink Ribbon, Red Ribbon Alliance is a partnership that brings together players like Merck, Bristol-Myers Squibb, and GlaxoSmithKline to look at combating cervical cancer and breast cancer within the developing world. These are actors that typically are competitors, but in the context of base of the pyramid, they see real benefit in starting to work together and collaborate. And so I've highlighted on the right side 4 key benefits that I'm seeing primarily drive why businesses are coming together to serve the base of the pyramid. As Susan already mentioned, it's often about complementary capabilities and knowledge. If you are an ICT, a communications company that's seeking to leverage your platform to bring services related to agriculture or health or consumer information, you may need to then think about what businesses bring those capabilities to bear to allow me to develop a new service offering. I think related to that is the ability for companies to access then their partners' network of relationships. This can be incredibly important in this convergence ecosystem. You're able to then leverage the strong connections that your partners have made within different levels of government, within civil society, with other businesses and suppliers. And that then really allows you ultimately to gain greater buy-in, increase your reach, increase your scale. The last point I'll highlight here is one key driver that I see for companies coming together is really to create a kind of investment multiplier. If you're seeking to invest in a foundational issue at the base of the pyramid, helping to address a need that will really enable many companies to be more successful, it makes sense to sometimes pool your resources. In addition, if it is, let's say, a one-to-one partnership, the opportunity for co-investment in a new product or services certainly can lower that startup capital and possibly reduce your risk profile. So at a high level, these are the key drivers that I'm seeing for why companies are increasingly seeking B2B partnerships. Moving on, I'd like to maybe spend a moment and just discuss how business-to-business partnerships in developing economies can be quite different than what I'll call traditional B2B partnerships within developed markets, because I think there's a few emerging themes about what can make these partnerships unique and are worth consideration. So one is, I think, looking at the convergent business models that are emerging at the base of the pyramid. This then, in turn, leads to different types of business partners. So as you see more social businesses, hybrid kind of companies that are looking at their bottom line, but also looking at the social impact that they're able to create. These may often be local partners. They're asking for different measures of success coming out of those partnerships, and there's a greater emphasis on looking at not just profitability and sustainability, but also the shared value that might be created. I think there's convergent delivery models that are certainly coming into play within B2B partnerships at the base of the pyramid. And compared to developed economies where I think partnership may offer a competitive advantage, might accelerate the ability to enter a market or reduce the cost, I think in developing context today, it is often practically infeasible to go it alone. It is simply too costly, and partnership it may be the only viable option to bring a new product or service to market. And when you really think about the challenges that companies must overcome often in these emerging spaces, looking at the limited existing infrastructure or ability to create awareness and effectively market products, and certainly often doing this at lower margin thresholds, it's really important to be able to harness the technology, logistics, competency, people, reach of partners in order to make that sustainable. And then I think related to that, there's new platforms for growth when you think about delivery models. And what I mean here, I think mobile is certainly one we're going to talk more about, and I think many are aware of, but also thinking about some of the capacities being built up at the local level. For instance, Danone partnered with CARE in Bangladesh to build up a rural distribution network. This really worked with 2,000 women and helped support setting up hubs, allowing them to distribute product at the local level. Once this got going and was working and they showed a model for growth, as you can imagine, other multinational private sector companies have been coming to the table asking, how can I access this capability? How can I utilize this capacity to also perhaps make my products and services available at the base of the pyramid? And lastly, I think micro-enterprise, which has certainly been in place for a while. I think fast-moving consumer goods companies have already tapped into this as a way to actually reach the base of the pyramid consumers. But I think other types of products and services are also going to be thinking about how to leverage micro-enterprise. And then lastly, financial models that are now enabling these types of business-to-business partnerships. I see within multinational companies more willingness from the businesses to really starting to invest in emerging markets, and they have more quote-unquote patient capital available for fueling these types of partnerships. There's also, interestingly, impact investment that's becoming available that's lowering investment hurdles. So this may be from traditional donors even looking to fund private sector initiatives. And then I think the carbon market is certainly something to watch. I've seen a couple quite innovative examples of private sector companies working to bring product or service to the base of the pyramid. For instance, a Swiss social private enterprise that implemented water filtration systems in 1 million homes in Western Kenya, and they fronted the $30 million upfront cost of that, partnering with JP Morgan to then sell the carbon credits from that initiative by reducing the need to boil water and thus burning wood. And so this is a kind of self-sustaining investment that the private sector is making in partnership with other companies, harnessing innovative financing. So then just to summarize, and I won't talk about everything here, I think we've covered a lot of it, but I see a couple trends that I think are only going to continue to accelerate companies' investment in B2B partnerships at the base of the pyramid. I think that technology as an enabler is certainly one to note with mobile, cloud. Certainly, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg of what is possible with those platforms. I think consumers, the power of global brands, consumers are asking and driving more and more of companies' decisions globally to invest in sustainability and look at their role within developing markets. That's only really emphasized by new metrics that are emerging. I see the Global Reporting Initiative. I've worked with Oxfam on poverty footprinting. They've worked with companies such as Coke, Unilever to look at how do their models for both sourcing and delivering products and services at the base of the pyramid, how does that then in turn impact poverty? It's really, at the end of the day, I think, causing a fundamental rethinking of capitalism. Many are familiar with Michael Porter's construct of shared value. I think this is really starting to move forward. According to the survey that Accenture did in partnership with the UN Global Compact last year, 78% of CEOs told us that they believe their companies ought to be engaging in multi-stakeholder partnerships to be thinking about issues at the base of the pyramid, and over 90% said sustainability issues are really critical to their future strategy. So when you think about companies such as Unilever that are dropping their quarterly earnings guidance in order to promote a longer-term view of success, I think that this is just starting to really take hold. And fundamentally, companies are thinking about what our different stakeholders, consumers, partners, suppliers, going to be asking and expecting of them in the next 20 years, 50 years. And so with that, I'll end there. I do want to just highlight, if you want more information, we do have the Convergence Economy paper that ADP has put forth last year. We've also worked with Vodafone and Oxfam on a connected agriculture piece that is also quite interesting. I think that if you have more questions, I'm certainly happy to hear from you. My email is here. So thank you for your attention. I hope there was some learnings that folks could take away from that.
So now, thank you, Anastasia. You presented a wide context and a multitude of examples. Now we're going to look at two very specific examples in terms of B2B partnerships that enable companies to seemingly expand beyond their traditional areas of core business, or to leverage their access to markets, consumers, or technology in partnership with other companies to pursue business that they might not have pursued in the past. So I'd like to introduce you to Axel Nemetz. Axel is the head of mHealth Solutions at Vodafone Global Enterprise, where he seeks to leverage mobile telecommunications technologies for improved patient care in emerging markets. Axel has spent more than 15 years in the pharma healthcare sector, working for pharmaceutical, biotech, medtech companies, hospitals, health insurance companies, and physician groups. Axel is going to provide us with an in-depth look at how Vodafone approaches business-to-business partnerships within its mHealth portfolio. Specifically, he's going to brief us on the SMS for Health project, which is being implemented in collaboration with Pfizer in the Gambia. Axel, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Susan, for this kind introduction and a warm welcome to all of you. I would actually like to build on what Anastasia just shared with us around partnerships. But before diving into that specific example for SMS for Health in the Gambia, let me also give you a quick background on how come that Vodafone is more and more looking into that area, and actually that the business for us in the mHealth area is also nicely expanding. As a mobile network operator, we are active in this mHealth space already since quite some time. And what we realized over the past years is that there was an increasing demand coming from the pharmaceutical sector, coming from the medtech sector, but also coming from developing markets. And it goes a little bit along the lines that Anastasia shared earlier with us, that we see emerging of different sectors. And in our case here, we see emerging between this, let's call it the 5 trillion healthcare sector and the 3 trillion telecom sector, because, I mean, for all of us, mobile technology or mobile phones are not actually perceived as technology anymore, but it's part of our daily life. And that finally this increased demand led then to the establishment of a business unit in 2009. Maybe one additional point I would like to raise in this introduction to you is that we are a commercial unit, and we also have as Vodafone a foundation which was established about some 10 years ago. The mission we have as an mHealth business unit is basically to improve healthcare outcomes and quality of life by giving patients and healthcare professionals increased flexibility and freedom. And this is something I hope that can be easily understood, and that's also in the DNA of a mobile network operator. When I look at the approach which we are taking as Vodafone in that area, there are maybe 2 or 3 points which might be worthwhile noting for you as the audience. The first point is we might have a different business model, and that's a business model beyond connectivity. What I mean by that is when we offer solutions in countries, take the example like SMS for Health in the Gambia, or similar examples. When you go into broad target groups, you need to offer solutions which are network agnostic. And that is something that's part of our portfolio of products which we are offering. And then at the same time, we are also trying to offer end-to-end managed services and to take out the complexity in the solutions for our customers. And I think these are two things which are increasingly important also in the mHealth space, to provide credible solutions that also resonate very well with the users in the end. Before I dive into the example, as you can see on this slide, we are offering different solution areas from remote care services over mobile flexible working, clinical research. The part that is most interesting in our conversation right now here is the mobile flexible working area for the emerging markets, and also in particular the access to medicine, because this is something which is a big need in the emerging markets where we can provide significant support. If I now dive into the example, which I would like to share with you, and I now need the support of my colleagues because I'm having some technical problems here. If you could switch to the slide number 6, which is called Access to Medicine, I would like to share the example around SMS for Health in the Gambia with you. This is actually a story we jointly developed with Pfizer, and Pfizer was actually the trigger point for starting this project in the Gambia. The project lasted initially, or the pilot lasted from summer 2010 until early 2011 during the pilot phase. And basically the trigger point for Pfizer was that there's such a big need for healthcare support in countries like the Gambia, and as a mobile network operator, we can make these things happen and bridge the lack of infrastructure there, that we started this partnership. Then we also included in this partnership the government. Actually, the government was driving a significant part of the initiative, and they defined the specifications for the need of the project there. And as Vodafone, we also partnered with a supplier that could help us to make these things happen. What is the content of this SMS for Health project? Actually, it's a project that allows in the Gambia to monitor stock levels of drugs, expiration dates, and also top healthcare events in the country. And the Gambia was taken because the Gambia is actually, it's a fairly small country with a population of close to 2 million people. And Pfizer was also interested to pilot a project there, which is actually pharmaceutical company or drug agnostic. So the products we are monitoring here are also not restricted to Pfizer products, but they also include additional products. And long story short, this project turned out to be a very, very nice success. And the way of how the project was developed, and now I ask my colleagues on the webinar to switch to slide number 7, was that we first had the pilot implementation, which was driven by us. We were kind of the project coordinator. But the government was a significant part there because they helped to define the needs, because they have the best understanding there on the situation in the country. After the pilot, the project was then handed over on the financing side to an NGO, to IHP, and that is a challenge when products like this are run into emerging markets to find a sustainable business model. We are right now working, and that's the third part of this collaboration. We are working on securing continued funding via the government in the Gambia. If you could now kindly turn over to slide number 8. What were the key takeaways for us, or the key learnings in order to make this project happen? I wanted to highlight 3 points here. And the first one is, if you do a project in a country with multiple stakeholders, you need to have the endorsement of the local government. You need to make sure that you're truly addressing the key needs in this country. And so in the first phase, you could almost say that the government was very much in the driver's seat, because they have by far the best understanding, of course, of the needs in their country. And then in a second step, another key learning for us here was to truly create a win-win for all stakeholders. And this is often easier said than done. I would just like to raise one point here. Stakeholders are, of course, not only the government, Pfizer, Vodafone, or our partner who helped us to make the training happen, IHP. Stakeholders are, of course, also all the nurses and healthcare professionals who are using the technology to key in information about drugs, around certain indications in their mobile phone, and send it to a central hub, to a central warehouse. And of course, we had to see and to identify a way of how to incentivize the healthcare professionals to participate in this process. And it was done because we transferred credits upon the correct typing in of required information in their mobile phones. They received credits on their accounts, which secured and still secures a continuous buy-in. Lastly, I would like, on slide number 9, now give you a little bit of an outlook. Where's this whole story heading? We would now like to expand this platform across more countries. Actually, this project initially started in another country, in Tanzania, but there we didn't have a drug-agnostic approach where we included 20 different drugs. We first started in Tanzania with one product. Then we expanded the project into the Gambia, and we showed that the platform is also extremely beneficial for a country and for all stakeholders when you expand it to 20 drugs. But now we have established a kind of gold standard which we would like to roll out to more countries. And this is right now what we are working on. What is the key barrier to overcome? A key challenge is always to secure the initial funding over, we'd say, over a 3-year period. Because somebody needs to be willing to take this risk and say, yeah, there's something in it for us, and I'm willing to finance this for an initial period. And then over time, once you show the benefits, it's a little easier to find additional supporters to make this a sustainable product. Ultimately, we would like to broaden this platform also and to use it as a first start and then complement it with technologies, SMS-based technologies for drug authentication, or SMS-based technologies for education around drugs and healthcare. Some of you might be familiar with our M-Pesa model, where you can use the mobile phone to facilitate payments. But we see this as an initial platform that has the potential to expand. Before closing, let me address also some learnings from our perspective around B2B relationships here. And I would like to focus on an element, because I heard that also some of you are coming, or several of you are coming from smaller, very entrepreneurial companies. And I would like to focus on B2B partnerships, in particular between big corporations like, for example, Vodafone, and smaller corporations. As Vodafone, we have several of these B2B partnerships happening. And these partnerships are mutually very beneficial, because the small companies are typically very fast, very innovative, come up with very interesting, very good solutions. And as a big corporation, you have, of course, the customer access, which can help to broaden the product, to bring it into a broader public. But we also have the experience, and we're actually very rigid on quality standards. And this can also help the smaller companies to make their solutions more stable and even more appealing to customers. I would not like to say I would like to share learnings, but more observations around these partnerships with you. What we realized in these partnerships, and we're having plenty of discussions like that with different partners, is that very often the smaller companies have a more of a technology focus. They say, well, we developed this, somewhere out there must be a customer. I exaggerate to some extent on purpose here. And as a big corporation, you're, of course, very much customer-driven, and you say, who's willing to pay for this solution? How can we find an angle there? And that is very often, it sounds trivial, but that's a key barrier that need to be overcome first. Yeah? Then the second one I already mentioned, that is the quality standards of big corporations. That can be a new experience for smaller companies, and it also links to the last point, which we experience very often as a challenge in these partnerships, and that is simply different cultures. When a smaller company, which comes from an very entrepreneurial spirit, is working with a big corporation, you have often the challenge of just bridging these cultural differences, and the best way to bridge it is to interact over a short period of time very intensively and getting to know each other better and better, and then have a first project which is a big success for every partner, because only the success brings you more and more together. So that's the summary from my side. I would now like to hand back to you, Susan. Thank you.
Axel, thank you. That was wonderful. A lot of information there. And I just wanted to make a couple quick comments, because when we speak about an initiative at the base of the pyramid, I know that our focus is always on sustainability and scale. And I make note of a few of your comments, which was basically the government, the importance of the local government buy-in. And when we get to the Q&A, I would be interested to hear about the government's appreciation of the role of the private sector. Also, you mentioned the willingness of Pfizer to pursue a drug-agnostic approach. That, to me, is fascinating, where a company is looking at the greater good or recognizing the need, perhaps, for scale. And then another point was the solution you found to incentivize healthcare workers. As we all know, in order to reach the base of the pyramid, to get that market access, one has to have a dedicated, trained, and efficient agent network. So the incentive structure is very important. I mean, that's just a few comments among many I'm sure the audience has. Now we will move right to Jean-Philippe Labat, who is the Vice President of Global Sales at the UK-based technology firm Movirtu. Jean-Philippe will talk about his company's experience in building B2B partnership alliances. Jean-Philippe is responsible for managing and providing strategic leadership on Movirtu's sales team. He has over 20 years experience working in the telecommunications sector with companies worldwide. And there's another fascinating model and technology that Movirtu has developed. So welcome to Jean-Philippe.
Thank you, Susan, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on the time zone you're in. Thanks for attending this webinar, and thanks for BCTA to provide me the opportunity to speak today. So Movirtu has introduced what we call the cloud phone technology, based on a very basic principle. At the start was, why is a telephone number attached to a mobile device, and how can you, virtualize this and consider your mobile number as your email address, and making sure that you can access that from any device from wherever you are. So having said that, we we've done part of our homework and make sure that we developed a platform called mHealth that enabling for you to have a telephone number even if you don't have you don't own or have a handset, a mobile handset. And the first obvious primary target for this technology was the base of the pyramid, where even if the technology price of a handset has dropped significantly in the last 10 years, it is still a significant expense to buy a handset for people in the $1 to $2 a day income. So we have developed the way of sharing, having a telephone number and being able to access that from a different handset from somebody else. And the little sketch that you see there in the presentation now, shows you how it works, and that's an example that we did originally in Kenya, and which is now deployed in Madagascar and Tanzania in Africa, and going to be launched in Pakistan very soon, is the fact that you own your own telephone number and you're able to access that from abroad or what you can call a village phone sharing device, especially in rural areas. And then when you're done, you return the phone. The advantage of the technology is 100% privacy of the use of your number, as when you hand back the telephone, you will not have any footprint on the handset that you have used. So partnerships are, the key essence of our work. We work with operators, and there are examples there. So we're working with Airtel, in India, Airtel in Africa, Tigo in Africa, and next in Latin America, and we're working with Telenor, in Southeast Asia. And they are obviously what you can see our customers, but also our essential partner to distribute, and to make the technology available to the base of the pyramid, which is the next billion, subscriber for mobile phone technology. And then, we also need to, guarantee access to the base of pyramid, and that's where the partnerships and most likely a three-party partnership between the operator, NGOs, and us, works. The access is provided by the operator itself, but the understanding of how the base of the pyramid or various communities, farmers, remote rural areas, fishermen, and various type of communities who are addressed by the NGOs need to be fitted in the marketing view of the operator. Most likely around the world, if you talk to marketing people in mobile operators and you ask them, how are you going to address the base of the pyramid, and people willing to, people who are earning between $1 and $2 a day, they don't know, because they've been asked to look after this segment. And the NGOs will play a key role there, providing the understanding how those community works and how it will need to be addressed. In addition to the sharing device aspect of our technology, we provided as a piggyback to that two major components, which is the info service with MX Info and the payment services with MX Pay, which will provide to all those cloud phone users without a handset ability to have access to information through on the devices they borrowed, and also be able to have electronic wallets where they can get funds distributed by NGOs and be able to remit and transfer some funds to other parts of the countries, as you know, which is a very likely aspect of the base of the pyramid. People are, you can call that migrants, but oftenly work in a different place that their family is. So you know, transferring money back and forth, you know, to their families is a very essential part of the of what they will be looking for. So you will see there a few examples of in the discussion that we have with between, you know, operators, NGOs, and type of projects, and it's very various. You know, the Axel talked about mHealth, which is an obvious target in order to distribute also information, and also to be able to get access to or get info from the base of the pyramid of what they do, what they will expect, and be able to also to monitor, you know, in the maternal health, for example, you know, how is it going on the HIV appointment reminders that we look after. So it's you know, you have, you know, various things. You can also look at the farming initiatives that we have in several countries. And also we developed with the UNDP the risk management and disaster recovery capacity that's, you know, after, you know, earthquakes or hurricanes, you have a significant number of, you know, people, you know, going on site and looking at what are the needs and the you know, and see what's happening and the roads availability, and they need to have a universal access, and the cloud phone will provide them, you know, the ability to use whatever handsets on site in order to be able to feed back information to the central, you know, management of the disaster recovery. So having said that, I think, you know, this is just to demonstrate that the and as Anastasia, you know, sketched out earlier, the I do not think that, you know, in today's world you can achieve something, you know, on your own, and you need to have, you know, larger audience and partners to achieve that, and that's an essential part of the work that we all have to do, is making sure that we have complementary parts of the jigsaw in order to make an initiative a profitable for everybody market. It's you know, achieving, you know, something that will be beneficial to users, providers, you know, is a very essential part of this, you know, partnership ideas, and make sure that that will work is a because you have all the components around the table will be able to provide, you know, their contribution. So, you know, thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. Again, another very interesting business example. We do have quite a few questions. I'm going to dive right in. One of the comments you made at the end, which resonates with what Axel and Anastasia have said, is basically that there needs to be an alignment of stakeholder interests, and there has to be a commonality in all parties benefiting from the initiative. So one question that we've received in various forms is, at the very beginning of the initiative, how does one decide that it's worth the risk? And where does the financing come? Does the company decide immediately? that this is in a foundation or a core business initiative? That's a question for Axel. And also, in each of the initiatives, Movirtu and also the Vodafone Pfizer, what is the role of grant funding, NGO support, etc.? So I think Axel can talk about the beginning of the initiative, the drivers, the willingness to take risk, and the financial support within the company or external support. And then, Jean-Philippe, you can talk about the Movirtu experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Let me talk about why and how come that companies are willing to take risks in this area. And it goes, the question goes a little bit back to what has been said earlier. I think, Anastasia, you mentioned it. If you're looking for innovation, for new ways of doing business, and I would say most, if not all, companies are doing that. You also need to be willing to take risks. And typically, these projects start small, and then you have a pilot phase with a limited risk before you go broad. And the risk you're taking needs to match your DNA as a company. You truly need to understand what's in it for you, if you can contribute a lot to that. And then that's one of the key criteria you take before you embark into a pilot. And after the pilot, if the outcome is positive, and the outcome is not always positive, let's also be clear about it, then it gives you a clear angle to expand. So what you're hearing here as examples right now, I can only talk for Vodafone, are the examples that were success stories. Other examples are known also from the mobile payment side, like M-Pesa, a product we are also offering to markets where mobile phones can facilitate payments between different users. These things all started small, and when we talk about these successes, we don't talk about all the other approaches which didn't work. So please let's bear that in mind. I'm not sure if it fully answers the question, Susan.
It sounds good to me, and I think, Jean-Philippe, if you can contribute in terms of the issue of partnership with NGOs, which you spoke about, startup grant funding, about the efficiency of the business model. We'll continue there.
Yes, thank you, Susan. So in order to complement what just Axel said, my view is the fact, as you know, we also started with pilot initiatives, and we started raising business case, and when we approached the operators and say, okay, there is today a significant portion of this planet which is not having ability to access the mobile phone as it is. So what are you going to do about this? So and we have built various ways of business case and approach, and we started, as Axel said, small, and doing some pilots with a few with a few operators, and we brought in NGOs as the NGOs had the need to communicate with their communities in a way which was the most cost effective. So it was, in that instance, quite easy to convince those NGOs to participate in those initiatives, as we were able to provide them a much more efficient and cost-effective way to communicate with the communities that they were looking after. So and that's where as I said, when you build those partnerships, and the essence is everybody needs to find its own interest in and makes its own benefits for its own achievements and targets. It's something that is essential. And if you, in the sketching out those partnerships, if you lose the idea that everybody participating in that needs to be beneficial of the initiative, then it will not work. So basically, I think that I hope that answers part of the question.
Thanks, Jean-Philippe. I'm going to bunch a couple of questions again together, specific business model questions for Axel and Jean-Philippe, and then I'm going to have some general questions for Anastasia as we wrap up. So we may go to 5 past the hour. We started a few minutes late. Axel, there are some questions here relating to competitors. So in terms of the business model and case for SMS authentication, there are a couple of other players. The question here refers to Sproxil, which is also a BCTA member company, and another company, it says mPedigree. And then the more general question is, what is the long-term business case for SMS for health programs? Now, if you can hold that a minute, I'm going to ask Jean-Philippe his questions, and then I'll let both of you chime in. So Jean-Philippe, there are some questions relating to who owns the solution when you have a technology solution, although you're collaborating and in partnership with the mobile network. And then there's also a question in terms of activity related to alternative energy or other things. I think it's, further expanding the business model. So those two specific questions, I'll let Axel go first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. The first question was relating to drug and counterfeiting solutions. Of course, many companies are tackling that area. And I would like to generalize here. Also with SMS for Health, we are having competition. And it's always good to have competition because that makes sure that you are on your toes. And if there wouldn't be competition, there wouldn't be innovation. So I don't really see a dilemma here. It's a mutual support to always try to stay a little bit ahead of the game. Then relating to your second question, the SMS for Health or SMS for Life program, what's the business model behind it? When you talk about doing business in emerging markets, I would argue that it's very difficult to have profitable situations during the initial period. I think everybody who enters that space understands that you need to do the right thing, and that resonates with what Philippe said earlier. You need to have the local understanding. You need to understand the needs. And then you need to enter with the right solution. And then when you scale, and that is ultimately the business model behind it, when you can scale a solution, when you can take a solution from one place to many other places, and I would like, again, to refer to the example of M-Pesa, which we developed in Kenya, this mobile payment solution. When solutions like that then travel from a small pilot first to a big country, then to more countries, then you start getting into a situation where you can get into a profitable situation. So you need to have a long breath. And that is, by the way, also true for pharmaceutical companies who are selling their products at preferred prices in emerging markets. And you need to get into scale, but it takes time. But it's worth it. It's worth it.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Jean-Philippe. Thank you.
No, please. Thank you, Susan. To answer the specific question, who owns the solution? As of today, the mobile operator owns the solution because he is the entity on the ground, be able to provide and distribute as a channel the solution. But having said that, owning a solution is depending on the contractual terms, and but basically we all enter we have entered in all our operations into revenue sharing type of activities, that means we accept to share the risks with all the parties involved. And I think also this is part of the equation when you're in partnerships is you can share the risks when you share the rewards, and if you don't want to share the risk, then you will not get any rewards. So and that's something that you have to always take in account. And as Axel said, you share the risks and you demonstrate that it works, and after that you're able to scale, and that's where the benefits are coming back.
Jean-Philippe, just a quick question, because we have here the mention that in fact Movirtu is a small startup company and it's
Yes.
partnering with the larger companies. How does that work? And then also just somebody had asked in terms of if Movirtu will be moving into a space, something with biomass, energy conservation, these sorts of activities. I don't know if you have a concept for an activity in this area.
In terms of the relations, I think, as Axel said, I think the ecosystems around mobile company as exists for quite a long time, and the real relation between startups and large structures works because we provide innovation. We provide new ideas, and the operators, as large established companies, are bulletproofing the solutions, making sure that scales, that works in all instances, being able to provide the sensible customer care to the right users. It's a real biosynthesis work where you provide something and the other entity is providing the complement in order to make it work properly. Of course, there's always a part of legal discussions and contracts and stuff like that, but that happens in any kind of business, whether you're big or small. It's still the case. But regarding the biomass aspect, we could address the connectivity needs there. And there is we have been talking to various type of initiatives. We need to as a small company to prioritize our activities and make sure that we know what we deliver works and work one step at a time.
Thanks, Jean-Philippe. So now I'm going to ask some general questions to Anastasia. I have to tell the audience you've been wonderful. There's many more questions than we have time to answer, so I hope that you join us again on future webinars. In the meantime, Anastasia, the types of questions we're getting in are, given that there's an economic crisis, or the fact of the economic crisis, which we seem to be coming out of globally, what is the impact on business in developing countries? And also, how can governments incentivize businesses to come and invest in the base of pyramid when in fact they're struggling in some instances to stimulate foreign direct investment? That's one type of question. And another type of question is, some of our audience and participants are concerned that we're actually addressing the needs of real people at the base of the pyramid, that we're not just creating solutions, and also that there isn't exploitation of consumers at the base of the pyramid. I've not heard this. Nonetheless, it's always reasonable to address concerns. So go ahead, Anastasia, and you can wrap up with some of your final comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan, and I certainly appreciate the questions. The global economic downturn, of course, affects everyone. I think no one is unscathed by that. So there is no simple answer. I think it does make investments across contexts more challenging for the foreseeable future, but it also, some would say, for those that are in a position to accelerate and make investments, it is an opportunity to use this time to get ahead. But I take the point that it will impact and slow perhaps the rate of investment at the base of the pyramid, as it will in all sectors. In terms of what can governments do, and which base of pyramid economies might we see as emerging and how that interrelates. I'm not an expert in this space, but I will say that what I observe is that those countries that are able to demonstrate a strong public sector where there are good policies and there's actually execution against those. So I think in some countries you'll see a good set of laws on the books, but then the implementation and the enforcement is very weak. I think that for countries that are able to create stability, transparency, I think the role of the public sector cannot be overemphasized in terms of creating an enabling business environment. And I think that those economies and countries that are able to demonstrate their consistency in that space, that makes it a much lower risk profile for companies coming in to invest. I actually very much like the second question, and I'll close off on that because I think it is extremely important to engage the consumers at the base of the pyramid, and it is not about creating products that they don't need. And in fact, as an economist, the research that I see is consumers at the base of the pyramid are incredibly decisive, and they have very specific tastes and values, and they use their limited resources very carefully. And so I would say the bar is even higher for companies that are in a profit-making model, at least in the long term, to be very aware. And if their products and services are not meeting needs, they will not succeed. And I know that I've seen several companies investing more in getting data and really understanding consumer preferences at the base of the pyramid and trying to seek innovative partnerships to collect that. And certainly many of the partnerships with NGOs is also a way to gain insight and knowledge to the needs of these consumers. So I think that is a very relevant question. And with that, my final comment is just I think it is so interesting that these partnerships that we've highlighted today really are built upon not just partnerships with other businesses, but the engagement of the government, the engagement of NGOs is critical, at least at this stage, I think, to getting these going. And I think that point is worth remembering when we think about B2B partnerships, that maybe it's a little bit more complex and there's more stakeholders involved than you might see in developed country B2B partnerships.
Thanks, Anastasia. So now we are wrapping up, and I will confirm your point that consumers at the base of the pyramid, just because they haven't had their needs met in the past, doesn't mean that they're lacking discernment. They're having to make very careful decisions, and they're dealing with a situation of scarce resources. So I think what today's session was about was how companies, governments, NGOs, all different stakeholders are really thinking about how they can meet the needs of consumers at the base of the pyramid. And that's highly valuable and worthwhile. And I laud the companies, the governments, the stakeholders, et cetera, that are taking part in this. Because now there's recognition that the base of the pyramid is an opportunity for business and for addressing needs. The private sector plays a very important role. So that's what we at Business Call to Action are all about. We look forward to having you on future webinars. Please go to our website, and you can also follow up with the speakers. I believe that the slides will be available afterwards, and it's our pleasure to share this information with you today. Thanks very much.